You read the title. Title of today's video, Conducting the Spirit of Play with Women. This is an episode that I've been meaning to do for a while now. Something that I've been doing recently is the polls. And this was one of the most popular ones outside of the one that I did last. So that's what we're going to go ahead and get into. If you do not know who I am, my name is Champ and I help men win. This is one of the elements that I believe is very, very important in a man's life. This is just being more social. This is being able to be playful, right? Obviously, conducting the spirit of play. I'll get into that in a minute, but make sure you go and follow me on Twitch, TikTok, Rumble, and on Spotify at Life of a Champ Podcast on every single platform. And if you did enjoy today's episode, leave a like, as well as make sure you go ahead and share it to somebody that might need it as well. So, conducting a spirit of play. This is something that I'm gonna make it sound a lot more lavish than kind of what it is, but in short, if I had to simplify it so people could really understand exactly what I mean, it's essentially flirting across your interaction, right? Or flirting through your interaction, right? That is what I would deem to be play. So conducting a spirit of play is understanding that the man and the woman are best when they're in this state of play, right? And there are things that need to be very, very clarified before you can get to this state of play that is most comfortable for the both of you guys. But I believe that conducting a spirit of play is super, super important. And a lot of men, for whatever reason, miss the mark when it comes to conducting a spirit of play, right? Being playful, being, let's just say, less serious, right? An issue that I see all too often is a lot of men, maybe they're not that experienced with women, right? And they're trying to get to know and court a woman, and they're doing it in a very, very serious, almost interview-like way. They're asking a lot of questions. They're not necessarily, things aren't necessarily lighthearted. They're not being playful, and that's an issue that I see that is something that I want to help people out with. And the first thing that I want to mention is this, right? When even interacting with women in general, there are two things that you need to build right right off the rip that's going to help the interaction flow a lot more thorough, right? This is going to be you need to be able to build up a certain amount of trust, and you need to build up comfortability. So what you're trying to do with conducting the spirit of play is to try to make sure that you're doing both of those things, right? And the only way that you can build that up is essentially playing a series of games, right? So you're playing multiple different things, right? You're playing multiple different games, and through those games, hopefully you guys both come to enjoy the outcome of that shared experience, and that is going to be how you build up that trust and comfortability. And obviously, it's a lot more simple, or rather, it's a lot more complex in the way in which I explained it, but essentially, you need to build up comfortability and you need to build up trust. And a woman's not going to she's not going to act or be the way in which you would like her to be if she's lacking comfort and if she's lacking trust within you. So those are the first two things you build up. Me personally, this was something that I'm going to say naturally, but I guess you could say I built it up in my younger years. But this is something that came very, very easily to me because I had already, before I started talking to, um, let's just say women more consistently, right? Um, I had already had a previous relationship, so I kind of understood that there needed to be a spirit of play that's going to be involved, right? If you want to begin to understand women, you must understand that they don't like things that are going to be all too serious. That's a lot of pressure. That makes them feel anxious. That makes them, you know, not be as comfortable in their environment, and that obviously is going to lead to lacking trust as well, right? But since I'm only speaking and trying to observe my behaviors uh, through my own interactions that I've had with women. But for the most part, I've been able to build a good level of comfortability very, very early on, and that has been to the liking of myself and the liking of the woman as well. And it's only being able to be built through playing these games, understanding that there's going to be certain things that can be utilized in the interaction that's going to be best for every single person that is in it, right? And before you begin to even play, right? What I would like to establish is this, right? There needs to be a certain type of understanding, whether it's conscious or unconscious, explicit or implicit, right? Essentially, understanding that you guys need to be polarized. And when I mean polarized, I mean you need to have foundational understandings of the roles that must be played by which individual, right? If you're going to take on the masculine role, you need to be making sure that you're doing the masculine things, right? And if she wants to play the masculine role, you also gotta understand that that's going to be very very hard to play with, which is why I would never recommend any man to go ahead and date a woman who already is in her masculine energy off of the rip, because as the man, and women want this, women want the masculine. It doesn't matter how she acts, women want the masculine, right? The most masculine women, unless they're like dudes or unless they're like lesbian or something like that, most women, regardless of their temperament, they want a man who is dominating. They want a man who is a leader. They want a man who is masculine, right? And if you are not that, then obviously that's something that you must work on. That's your frame. It's a different part that I had mentioned on a previous podcast. So tap in with that one if you need help with essentially constructing your masculine frame. But yes, I do believe the foundation of play is going to be built on where people really understand their roles, they understand who they are, they understand what they bring to the table, and then they can move forward into their natural frames, right? The masculine and the feminine frame, right? So, like I said, women don't necessarily like people that are all too serious, right? There's going to be a certain time and a place for you to be serious, right? But like I said, I see it all too often where a woman goes into an interaction, or I've heard from women, I've heard from men, right? Where I'm like, okay, how did it go? Oh, it went all right. And then I get into the details of it, and then it makes it seem as if he's being very, very serious. And like I said, just taking it all too serious. And initially, of course, you must understand that hopefully your intent is good, right? Good in the sense that it's trying to build something with someone. Hopefully, you're trying to find that someone, right? That is obviously going to be a very, very solid foundation um, that you should build your interactions out of, right? You shouldn't just be sleeping around with a bunch of women. You shouldn't be just, you know, just going out on dates, just go on dates. If you need experience, that's an entirely different thing. But um, yes, I do believe that is going to be very, very essential for you to go ahead and understand what play looks like, right? Once you already have the foundation of polarization, you can now begin to you now can begin to have the most amount of play that possibly can exist. And I'm going to detail out what is specifically play, right? Play can obviously look like many different things, right? For me and for what I think, and of course, if you want to go ahead and leave a comment about certain ways in which you could play with women, right? Conducting the spirit of play with women. This could look like, um, this could be with ideas and through conversation, right? This could be with past memories, right? So let's just say you guys had a past memory of something, you bring it up, and now it connects to the situation that you're currently in the present moment. That could be something that is a form of play, right? Um, like I said, with ideas, right? Let's just say you guys have connecting ideas. Maybe let's just say you guys have researched something that you both find interesting, and now you can begin to conduct the spirit of play with that, because now you know a little bit more, and you know that she might know a little bit more about a certain topic, and now you can begin to joke based off of that, and then she'll be able to understand the inside joke, right? That is play. That is going to be a huge thing that I believe is very, very essential, right? Another one you can really bond on and play with is, and this is what I would recommend if you can find somehow, some way. If you guys have similar upbringing, you can now talk about childhood reminiscent symbols, right? That's another one that's very, very good with play, where you be able to, oh, do you remember this, or did you, when you grew up, did you have this interaction, or did you have this whatever, right? Did you have this experience? And that is also another one that could be conducting that spirit of play, but essentially keeping things very, very lighthearted, right? And essentially tapping back into this childlike state, not childish state, right? Once you're able to really unlock what that looks like, then like I said, the little girl is gonna come out in her, and she's gonna enjoy spending time with you, right? She's going to truly enjoy spending time with you, and that's exactly what you would want, right? And that's exactly what she would want as well, right? And another thing that I want to mention as well, there's other ways in which you can play as well. Some of the other ones I would like to mention that I think are very, very interesting, and you know, going along with that play. This is going to look like singing and dancing together, right? Being able to be goofy in that sense, that's going to be the play, right? Maybe you're not taking it too serious. Hopefully you're comfortable enough to be able to, sing and dance and just goof off with the woman. And of course, like I said, it needs to be within the structure, a foundation of polarization, because here's the thing. If you're not that masculine and you're joking around with a woman, she's just going to see you as a friend. She's not going to see you as anything more than a friend. So that's why I need to mention that foundation, right? Once she understands that you are the masculine, that you are upholding that role, you understand the frame, you understand exactly what can interfere and affect that role, then you can begin to, go out of it. I feel like a lot of men, they're one or two, right? They're usually the not playful, too serious, and it comes off as like standoffish to the woman. And then you have the men that are the complete goofballs that think trying to be funny in every single interaction is the best thing when it comes to attracting a woman. And obviously, I don't believe either of those are going to be the ideal, in my opinion. But I do believe that getting in that middle ground, that's going to be where you're best, right? Where you still can be serious, but you don't need to be serious, right? She understands that you can be serious. She understands that you are capable, not only physically but mentally, to go ahead and handle certain situations that are a little bit more complex. But she also understands that you want to have fun with her, right? And I think that's very, very important, right? If you're not having fun with women, they're not going to. If they're not enjoying the experience with you, then you need to change something or do something different, right? Um, another forms of play could look like having a certain mindset that is understood about how to approach the world together. That's an entirely different one that you create and curate throughout the interaction that can help both of you guys with your lens of how to approach the interaction in general. And of course, what I will say is maybe this is a little bit more complex. Maybe this is going to be a little bit more detailed and specific to, let's just say, a relationship, right? But I do believe that even this can be truly understood through conversation, especially very, very early on, right? For me personally, I like to, of course, have my fair share of fun, but I also like to have my fair share of getting to know people through asking questions, not making it seem like an interview, still keeping it lighthearted. So I'll give you an example of a play, right? Let's just say one of the questions I love to ask, because I believe this can get you can get to know a person a lot, and you can bring up points to talk about if you ask the question of who are your top three favorite artists, right? So let's just say you ask a woman who are your top three favorite artists, and she says, "Oh, I like Kendrick Lamar." And you're like, you know what, Kendrick Lamar, he's not, you know what? After that beef, that really rubbed me the wrong way. I'm more of a Drake fan, right? But the way in which you go about it, right? I probably didn't illustrate it the best way that I possibly could have, but essentially doing a little bit of push pull type of play, right? And I think that's going to be alluring, and especially if she likes you a lot, right? Let's just say she does answer that specific way. You are a Drake fan, she's a Kendrick fan for whatever reason. She might even try to change her answer for you if she likes you. If she likes you that much, she might in terms of playing. If you decide to pull back a little bit, she might want to go forward and try to be like, you know what, let me change it up for you. See what I'm saying? So little things like that can be played. And like I said, I understand that's not the best example, but that is just a very, very small example. Or let's just say she says her favorite artist is Taylor Swift, and you're like, oh, so you were probably watching football with all the boys whenever she was on TV, right? Or during the Super Bowl. You can mention little things like that, right? That goes back on the way in which you. I guess it can kind of relate to the mindset that you have when approaching the world together, right? Is understanding that these are certain things that do exist that you can be playful and can be lighthearted, and like I said, that is just a small example, but asking questions and then kind of allowing that little push pull type of play, that's going to be very, very good. And of course, if she's also playing along as well, she would also do that same thing where she would pull away, then she would come back, right? Then that's going to be a good dynamic. It's going to be a good attraction dynamic. It's going to be a very, very fun dynamic, and it's going to be at the very least very, very interesting for the both of you guys, and that's obviously the most ideal. Um, Obviously, like I had mentioned a little bit earlier, creation of inside jokes is going to be another form of play. If you can now refer, and your ability to do this really says a lot about your social calibration. But um, if you're able to bring out certain things that happened in the past, so let's just say you went on a date. You went on a date one time, and there was a certain thing that happened, and now you go on another date, and now you're able to integrate something that happened on that first date into the second date and make a point about it. So let's just say, for example, um, let's just say there was a really, really annoying woman. You guys were at dinner, and there's a really, really annoying woman that was at that first date, right? The second date coming around and be like, oh, let me look around real quick to make sure that lady's not here from last time, right? That could be a little bit of a joke, and then she'll begin to laugh. That is that lighthearted play that I'm talking about, right? So little things like that, if you're able to implement that within your interactions, and almost like intertwine your interactions together to make it seem like an experience, and that's what I believe, right? When it comes to your interactions with women in the first place, you're bringing her into your world. And a woman should want to come into your world. You shouldn't want to step into her world, into her frame, right? You should want her to step in. She should want to step into your frame and into your world and see the world through your own experience, right? Through the experience that you guys both share. Um, and with that being said, if you're able to do those certain things, it's going to be a lot more enticing. It's going to be a lot more interesting for both of you guys, like I had mentioned, right? Um, another thing I guess you could say is another form of playing is timely disagreeing or play fighting, right? I'm not actually like like it doesn't even have to be physical. It, for the most part, probably wouldn't be physical, but essentially just not agreeing or being so agreeable to everything, anything and everything that she has to say, right? I feel like a lot of men, they want to be this yes men for women, right? Thinking that women will like them. But I have found out that if she likes you and she respects you, that you disagreeing actually can be very, very beneficial to the both of you guys in terms of conducting the spirit of play, for sure. And the way in which you go about that with your tonality, with all of that, which I'll get into in a second, is going to be completely changing of the situation. But I do believe that you can get to the point where you are able to disagree. You are able to play fight in a specific way that is conducting a spirit of play that is going to add to the attraction in general, right? Obviously, one thing I want to mention with this is it's obviously going to be very, very nuanced, and you need to be very, very timely with when and where you do this specific type of play. But it definitely can work out, right? Like I said, just be willing to take the other side and to try to be able to find a laugh within it, right? You don't need to be always on her side, or like let's just say you ask her who are your top three favorite artists, she names people, and then you happen to be like, you know what? I also like that same amount of I also like those people as well, right? And then you're kind of overly playing it too much, right? You're trying to get her to like you, but you're doing it in a way that's not necessarily being you. Does that make any sense? And I see a lot of men doing that. And I think that effort to try to conduct the spirit of play is disingenuous, right? Obviously, you're trying to build up comfortability and you're trying to build up trust. But here's the thing: it needs to be built on something that's actually real, right? And I see it all too often where men aren't really necessarily doing that. Where it is a real connection. It is a real play that does exist. And I'm not saying you lean the complete opposite way, but understand that obviously the situation that I'm describing is obviously nuanced, but essentially disagreeing can be a form of play, and it can most definitely be a very, very effective form of playing for sure. All right. And a lot of things that I want to mention with this as well that do really set the foundation for conducting a spirit of play. This is going to look like suggestive behaviors through actions and nonverbal communication. And what I mean by that is this, right? Your ability to do certain things, to say certain things, is going to either create tension or push you away, farther away from being able to create tension, right? And when I say tension, I mean like let's just say attraction, right? I guess attention with attraction, right? If you're able to conduct yourself a certain way, maybe being able to smile timely, maybe being able to use eye contact timely, maybe able to say things a certain way with your voice tonality, that's going to be much better when it comes to conducting a spirit of play. These are things that must be focused in on, and like I'm gonna reiterate what I mentioned earlier, right? It is going to be obvious that a lot of these situations are going to be nuanced, but I do believe that the way in which you carry yourself and how she perceives you through your voice tonality and your eye contact and your ability to smile timely is going to be, you can say the same exact thing, right? So like let's just say for example, I go back to my example that I mentioned earlier with the annoying woman being on the first date and the second date comes around. Your ability to bring that up, the context in which you're able to bring it up, the tonality, your ability to smile so she understands that it's a joke, is going to be very, very huge when it comes to trying to get that the best reaction possible, right? I can completely see a world that does exist where an annoying woman does exist. You guys both acknowledge it on the first date. You get to the second date. It is not, you decide to mention it, right? It's not timely. It's not said in the best way, and it comes off like you're a dick, right? And just that one little misstep with not making sure your voice tonality is more playful, more lighthearted. That is going to be the complete difference in perception that she will have of you and have of the interaction, and more importantly, could be potentially destroying a a part of the conducting the spirit of play within that interaction, at least at that time, right? So those things are going to be very, very huge when it comes to conducting a spirit of play, right? Your ability to know when to have a certain voice tonality in a certain situation, right? Which is obviously something that's I can't train you. I can give you pointers, but I can't necessarily train you on this. I'd have to hear you, and you'd have to be fully in character, and that takes a whole lot of other things. But tonality is huge with women in general, right? Especially with conducting a spirited play, but just in general, it's going to be huge. Eye contact, another one of those things that I will constantly mention when it comes to attraction in general. But yes, it's also very, very good within conducting a spirited play. It must be acknowledged at the very least. And like I said, just being able to timely smile, right? Understand when things are going to be a little bit more lighthearted. When you're joking, that's how she'll know you're for sure joking. That's another thing, right? I feel like men try to joke, they don't necessarily make people feel like it's a joke, and then it comes off like you're a dick, right? They didn't smile, they didn't make it seem as if it was a joke, right? They just said it thinking that it was a joke, and then it can come off a completely different way. I've seen it happen very, very often with people that are less socialized, um, where I get to know this person, right? So I understand the ways in which they joke, but let's just say their body language, their voice tonality, and their ability to smile or make any facial expressions is, let's just say, delayed, or let's just say not there at all. But I still know they're joking. Initially, I'm like, okay, this person's a complete dick. What the fuck is he talking about? But but here's the thing. That's exactly what women base some of their first interactions and impressions on, is certain interactions like that. That's why it's important that you need to make sure you have tonality. I keep reiterating the same things. You know what the hell I'm talking about. You need to make sure those are unlocked for sure. Another thing with this being said, with conducting a spirited play, and I think I need to mention this because I do believe it is almost as important as anything that I mentioned on today's episode, right? With conducting the spirit of play, it should be almost a natural progression towards breaking the touch barrier. And this is something that is obviously a lot more complex than I'm going to give it time for today's episode. But I do believe that if you are in if you are conducting a great spirit of play with a woman, contact, breaking the touch barrier in general is just going to come very, very natural, right? Whether it's touching her arm, touching her hand, touching her thigh, touching her shoulder, moving her hair out of her face, touching her face, right? Holding her waist, little things like that, right? Those are going to be things that are going to be very, very obviously nuanced. Like I said, there's going to be certain situations where it's going to be best to do this and best to not do this. But if you're conducting a spirit of play, you're going to be able to see. And I don't necessarily recommend that men, just go in and try to make contact just to make physical contact, right? I don't recommend that at all. And of course, like I had mentioned, within all things, this is going to be very, very nuanced. So, like I said, I don't want to be held responsible for you to try to make a move on a woman, or think that you're conducting a certain type of spirit of play, and then you try to do that, and then obviously all of a sudden she just backs off completely, right? I think it's going to be something that should naturally happen, right? I don't think when I used to do that, I didn't necessarily think, oh, now I'm going to try to touch her leg. No, it was something that was completely natural. That should be part of the games in which you guys play, right? And one thing I want to mention with this as well is I feel like there's a lot of men who are scared to try to break the touch barrier nowadays, which I believe you damn near should be, right? If you're properly socialized, don't worry about it at all. If you're not properly socialized and have never done it before, which, like I said, I'm sure some of the people in which I'm talking to today are going to be in that position, then it's going to be a little bit more difficult to know exactly when and where to break the touch barrier, and how, rather. If you do want more information with that, I'm creating a community right now where I'm going to be going over complex topics like that when it comes to dating. So just let me know, and I will hook you up with that for sure. But Yes, another one of those things that I think is very, very important, breaking the touch barrier. You need to do it in a light, playful manner and then observe whether or not it was a good move or if it was too soon, right? I feel like some women, they're going to be they're going to be, some women are going to be almost inviting. They're going to be inviting this type of behavior, right? Some women are going to be a little bit more standoff. And if a woman is already, let's just say she's leaning back, and this goes with body language, and I'm going to be creating another episode here soon about part two about more secrets to body language. But if let's just say she's leaning back, her arms are crossed a little bit, and then you're trying to make, trying to make somewhat bodily contact, you're probably gonna miss. You're probably gonna airball, if I'm being honest with you, right? But let's just say she's engaged, she's laughing, she's smiling, she's having a good time, and then you decide to put your hand on her thigh, and you're sitting next to her. It might go good. It might go good. But like I said, it needs to feel natural. It doesn't need to be forced. It doesn't need to be intentional, right? I do believe that it is very, very important for the reason which I'll mention right now. Let me read the comments quick. So, understanding time and place is equally as essential as tonality. Of course. Of course. Because here's the thing. If you're trying to be seductive in a place that's not seductive, then here's the thing. It's not going to work out, right? If you're trying to be seductive in a place... when I say seductive, I believe you can be this with your tonality, 100%, right? You can be a little bit more soothing, a little bit more intentional, and it'll go very, very good. But like I said, you must understand the timing and the place for sure, right? If you're trying to be all seductive and trying to create this, the spirit of play right around her parents or right around, her family and all that, that's going to be a little bit more questionable. Let's just say you're by yourself or on a date or whatever, if you wanted to play like that, then obviously you're probably going to have a lot more success for sure. Or does one rank above the other? I'm going to say, yeah, I would say understanding the time and the place, right? You need to understand where you are and what is appropriate in that time and place. I do believe that there's I think, and I'll mention this as well, right? I think if you have it like that, right? To me, I have it like that, right? Where it doesn't matter where you are. I can turn on the voice tonality whenever I want to in whatever environment, and it'd be funny. And it still be playful. Well, she'll understand. She'll understand. Oh, I know what time it is. Obviously, this isn't the time and the place, but she still knows what time it is, right? So that's completely different. But yes, you need to be able to conduct a spirited play. That's what I'm trying to suggest to you. There's many ways in which you can do it. Some people call it flirting. I think it's a little bit more elaborate than just flirting, right? I feel like it's something that can be intertwined with all the interactions that you have that is conducting this spirit of play. That constantly renew itself. And I think it's a little bit more deeper than what I would think flirting is, right? I feel like flirting is a little bit more, let's just say, a provocative intent. I feel like being in a state of play isn't necessarily the most provocative or the most, let's just say, I'll just say like sexual, for example, right? I feel like conducting a spirited play is going to be a little bit more playful. As flirting isn't always playful, it can be a little bit more, like intentional. But conducting a spirited play, I think, is just slightly different for sure. It's very, very similar though. But I'm going to mention this and then I'll go ahead and end it off. One thing I think is very, very important as well when it comes to breaking the touch barrier. The last thing that you want to do, or okay, I wouldn't say this, right? All right, I wouldn't say that, right? Understand that there's certain people that have this problem, and you don't want to have this problem, and you also don't want to have the opposite of this problem. The problem that I'm going to illustrate is this, right? There are certain people who go on 3, 4, 5 dates with a woman and don't break the touch barrier ever. And then now when you break the touch barrier, it's going to seem like this, like, what the hell? As opposed to you doing it in the first date. I'm sure this has existed for sure, right? Let's just say I was dating a woman and somebody else is also dating that same woman, right? Let's just say, I have charisma and I understand the time and place and I understand tonality. I understand eye contact. I understand all these things like I had mentioned earlier. I could probably break the touch barrier in the first interaction, right? The way that I like to do it, right? Automatically you got to set up the frame. If she's attracted to you, if she's highly attracted to you, you could pretty much do whatever on the first date, and it probably will go at least okay, if her attraction's high enough for you, right? I like to start my interactions as if the girl's already mine. That's the way that I set it up, right? That's the frame in which I go to. So let's just say, for example, I make sure, hey, when I do greet her, how do you greet her? I usually greet my woman with a hug, right? That's what I do with every single woman that I've ever talked to. For the most part, I greet them with the hug. I don't greet them with, oh hi, or a handshake or anything like that, because I don't think that's not ideal. That's one way to break the touch barrier. Obviously, going along as well. Maybe you're trying to maybe she feels comfortable, and you kind of gauge her. Maybe you can grab her hand to try to lead her or whatever. Maybe she'll grab your arm, whatever, right? But the last thing that you want to do is do it too late, right? A lot of men think this would work in their advantage because then they can build up the comfortability, they can build up a lot of these things, but in the same breath, you're placing more attention on it if it's taking longer, and it makes it seem like it's a bigger deal than what it is, right? So I see a lot of men, they do run into that problem, right? Where they either are breaking it too soon, which happens often, or they try to break it when it's almost too late, right? It's so overly delayed that now the touch begins to be a little bit awkward, because now what you're trying to do is trying to avoid this friend frame, right? And if you're delaying physical contact for the fourth, fifth, sixth interaction, she already kind of sees you as a friend. She doesn't see you in that way, right? Let's just say you were to do it in the second interaction. You now want to break the touch barrier, right? It'll either go one of two ways. It'll go good because you've built up rapport, you've built up comfortability, you've built up trust in the first interaction, and now she feels okay with that, right? Hopefully you talked before the date, hopefully you talked after the date, and maybe on the second date, maybe she feels a little bit more comfortable with you, right? But on that second date, like I guess I could say I would recommend it on the second date, right? It might be too soon, and she doesn't like it. She either push back, maybe she won't talk to you ever again, right? Which does happen to men, of course. But at least you know. But here's the thing: if you waited to the fifth time and you try to break it then, and it was almost too late, or maybe it's even too soon somehow, some way, then obviously she wasn't even rocking with you in the first place, and you could have figured that out 3 dates ago, like 150, $200 ago. You see what I'm saying? So it is almost best for you to. I'm not gonna say wait to the second interaction, because it's gonna be completely dependent on her attraction towards you, but ideally speaking, you want to try to get this. You want to build this level of comfortability as quick as I'm not going to say as quick as you can, but in a timely manner that is relatively quick, right? If you're able to do that, it's going to be a lot easier. And like I said, you're going to avoid, hopefully, breaking the touch barrier a little bit too early, or waiting a little bit too late, right? Like I said, you're trying to avoid the friend frame. The only way that you're going to avoid the friend frame is if she understands thoroughly that you are not trying to be friends with her, right? If you go 4 to 5 interactions without touching her, and now you want to touch her, she's gonna be like, well, I thought you were my friend. I thought you were just trying to be friendly. Now you see what I'm saying? So, with everything, with attraction, with all these things with women, it's going to be completely dependent on a lot of different factors. All I'm going to do is give you the foundation of knowledge that I think would be best for most people. And then you go ahead and go from there, and hopefully you can use your observations, use the signs that you see, hopefully with body language, and hopefully she has a high attraction for you, and then a lot of things will work out. But at the very least, you want to recognize all these things. Is she feeling comfortable? Is trust truly being built? Is she letting her guard down a little bit more, right? Um, is she also trying to play and trying to conduct a spirit of play? Because here's the thing. Another thing is this: some of the time, it's not you, and that's something that I need to mention because I think it's very, very important. Some of the time, you might be doing everything that you're supposed to do, right? You might be conducting a spirit of play. You might be doing all these things, and it's going good. And it's truly, here's the thing: it would work for 90% of women. But let's just say this woman is in the 10% where it doesn't work, and she's maybe a little bit more socially awkward, which does exist and can happen. And she's not reciprocating, the same spirit of play. Maybe she seems a little bit. Maybe she is interested in you and she is attracted to you, but maybe she just doesn't know how to conduct a spirit of play, and she kind of just a little bit awkward with that. It'll come off as if she's not interested, or if she doesn't really care for the interaction. So that's something that you must understand that can happen as well with trying to conduct a spirit of play. You would hope that it's being reciprocated, and hopefully this woman knows how to reciprocate the same type of energy that she wants. And if she does, you're going to be good. If not, it might be a little bit of a struggle. Maybe it has to do with attraction. Maybe she's just an awkward person. That can be the outcome as well, right? I feel like a lot of men, they kind of want to blame themselves always, but I don't necessarily always believe that it's the man's fault. I would say like probably 90% of the time it's probably going to be the man's fault, right? He's not going to be properly socialized. Obviously, like I mentioned on a previous podcast, right, women are a little bit more socialized, especially early on. They're a lot more socially calibrated than men for the most part, and it's because they have a lot more social interactions, right? If you're a pretty woman, you're going to be properly socialized most of the time. I'll say that. If you're a decently attractive man, there's going to be certain situations that you're going to be in that you're going to not know what to do with. So that's going to be completely different as well. So that's all I really had to say for today's episode. If you guys have any questions or comments after the fact, I will go ahead and respond to them accordingly. And yeah, I do believe this is very, very important, right? This element of flirting, this element of being playful, this is what all women want, right? Obviously, they want it from the right man, right? The man that hopefully is going to be having some type of structure and some type of strong, consistent frame. And that is how you avoid the friend frame, like I had mentioned, right? You want to avoid that. You want to make sure that your intentions are known, right? You don't want to be friends with her. You want to be somewhat friendly, right? But you don't want to be friends with her. And I believe conducting the spirit of play, at the very least, is going to hopefully build up the trust and comfortability, like I had mentioned. And after that, you know what? The interaction can go many different ways, right? So, obviously, you know how it goes. Use the advice when it applies and discard some of it when it doesn't apply. But at the end of the day, this hopefully is going to be a good foundation, and maybe I'll make a part 2 to this one. But yes, conducting the spirit of play, I believe, is very, very, very important, and something that has been instrumental to my own interactions that I've had with women, and something that has been a complete advantage that I've seen within my own interactions as opposed to other men's, at least hearing and observing other men's interactions, right? You don't want to be too serious or they're going to feel like it's an interview, right? If you're too goofy, they might just see you as a friend. You need to be able to find a balance, and once you find the balance, you're going to have a lot more success. So that is all I have to say for today's episode. Hopefully you took something from this. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, and also make sure you go ahead and share it to somebody who might need it as well. Other than that, this was episode 242 of the Life of Champ podcast, talking about conducting the spirit of play with women. Next episode is going to be on Thursday. Tap in with that one for sure. And one thing I want to mention as well, just an apology. The last 2 Mondays, I've been very, very busy at work, and I haven't been able to go live. Obviously, I want to go live and tell you guys a little bit about my life. You know, if you like listening to music or want me to react to something, that's typically when I do what I do on a Monday. So tap in with, hopefully, I'm going to be going live this Monday, so tap in with that for sure. If it's a video or a person I'm going to react to, like I mentioned, let me know for sure. But other than that, it's a lot to say. Conduct a spirit of play with women, and yeah, make sure you follow me Twitch, TikTok, Rumble, at Life of Champ podcast, and welcome to the winning team. Hopefully I've given you what you need in order to win. Y'all have a good rest of your night, and tap with the next podcast on Thursday.